There we go. Sometimes this thing don't take off like I'd like it to. I try to start it before everything's downloaded in here, and it kicks out on me about when I take my first few sentences and put them in here. Well, last night I did look at a couple of channels, and of course, obviously, I left a comment here and there. What I wanted to talk to you about today was, before I'm talking about gifts, how they're given, and the meanings in the way they're given. A lot of them have strings, and what that does is it creates an obligation between the receiver and the giver. And I've always backed channels that are very good with big hearts, and some of them re-gift. Okay, their total reason for being is trying to help somebody or make the world a better place. And some of those that give totally of themselves and everything that comes in are kind of rare on this earth. And it's hard sometimes to understand why somebody can be that way, where they give so much of their self. Because in today's world, it seems like everybody is an opportunist. They're after something. And, there's one YouTuber out there that he don't mind even telling you what he's after. Money, more money, more money. And his claim is that I want to give away more money. It's what he keeps in between that made him a millionaire. So, he's collected a lot of money. He has a very successful business of collecting. It's too bad we all don't have that same success. Unfortunately, some of us don't have what it takes to do that, and sometimes it's called a cold corporate heart. And through all the years, I've had the privilege in some places, and sometimes it was more like punishment, having to deal with people with a corporate heart. It was an atmosphere that actually eats at you if your intent is to try to be honest. It is almost impossible to operate in that atmosphere. When you sit down to a board meeting, and it's like a feast of vultures talking about customers and clients. And it kind of eats at your base, if you will. But out here in this world, in the real world I call it, where you run into people and individuals that still have a good moral base, once in a while somebody will come along that has a very big heart. And one of those people that I've met that meets that criteria is a woman named Lisa. And she goes by the name of Lisa Lee and has a very good channel and has proved how big a heart her is by the amount of work she puts in on it and the amount of coordinating she does to see to it that gifts coming through her channel are distributed in the correct way. Now, there are a lot of people out there that get upset with her, and actually some of it is jealousy. We like to use the word haters a lot of times without really knowing whether that's the purpose of the hater or not. Some of them, I think it's more of a jealousy thing, and some of them have been brainwashed into believing a different scenario. Okay, that people are human. They believe what they're going to believe. So whoever gets their attention first usually has the biggest influence on them. Now, we also have people out there that I consider similar to indentured slaves. And that means they've been given gifts with strings attached. And this is one of the worst things that can happen to a person. Boy, this thing is really doing some cracking. Maybe, is that better? Yeah, I guess it is. And that's what I wanted to address today. And I hope you don't get too upset with me. But I am going to tell you the way I see it, my opinion. And I've heard from different channels that giving opinions such as I'm going to give you today would keep me off from some creators' channels. And if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. I can't help that. My years of experience gives me an insight as to the wrongdoings that can happen out there with gifts that are that are given out there that have an intent that is much different than what other people would perceive. And what I've seen in the last month or so, is a guy named David, and he's got two different channel names that he puts out there, but it's still one and the same. I don't know who he really is. I mean, I know a last name that it comes back to, but I really don't know who he really is. So you could say I'm talking about somebody I don't know who he is. I don't know who I'm talking about. I can only tell you what I have observed. So he come along, and he seemed to pick along, and this goes back 5 months, by the way, so far. I haven't taken it any further than that at this point. But he seems to be back in different channels that seem to have a problem with Jeremy. And everybody knows who I'm talking about when I just use the name. And like I say, this is my opinion of what I'm looking at. And this guy likes to give out gifts. And one of the first things he does when he goes on a channel, if there is a section on there that says membership, he awards memberships to the people that are in the chat and these people that have these super chats. And so then he builds up a certain amount of reputation in there. And they're all very thankful, and they kind of boosted his status up very quickly. Now, some of these people have been with those channels for years, and all of a sudden they feel a little slighted because they're down here. At first, they're grateful because they're getting some free memberships. And some of them even get free membership and then bumped up to the next one because here comes that gift, right? And the creators like it because the money from the memberships go directly, I was going to say directly to their pocket. It goes through YouTube first. YouTube takes their percentage off from it, and then it goes to the creator of the channel. So now that's the very first salvo that goes into those channels, and he does it to multiple channels, to people that have that type of a thing in there. And then, all of a sudden, here comes big gifts. I've seen some as much as 500 pounds. I don't know what the exchange is today, but it might be, say, $640 US, maybe a little more. I just haven't looked at it. At one time, it would have been a lot more than that. But like I say, I don't know what the exchange is at this point. Wow, that's a pretty good gift to get as a creator in one bump. And it might happen more than once while you're doing this. And some of them have been overwhelmed because they have never seen gifts that size. When you reach my age, and quite frankly, years ago, I used to handle checks that were in the multi-million-dollar range. And you'd say, well, nobody writes a check out for that. But yes, I do. I was on very big projects, and there was times where I had to collect from our client, and I would bill them, collect it, put it in the bank for the company I worked for. It was not my money, but I was responsible for the project, and part of the project is you do the billing and collecting, and that's what I would do as a project manager there. Now, that's a lot of money. This is years ago. This goes back, up to 40 years ago that I was doing some of that stuff. And it makes you wonder, boy, but the company I worked for, the bonuses were great. The pay was great. I could live almost like a millionaire off of my salary and the bonus program. So I lived in a nice house, and I drove a nice car, and we had nice things. You know, I was still raising my daughters up back then, and all in all, I felt grateful to the company. But along with that, you know, I got to deal with a lot of people that I wouldn't normally want to deal with. If I wasn't in middle management, and that's what that was back then, I wouldn't have had to deal with it. If I was just a field person, like when I first started, I was a field engineer. And I didn't have to deal with the politics that the corporate office did. And part of the job I had to do, you had to take psychological exams to pass, to get your authority to walk into nuclear plants, let's put it that way. You also had to have a background. Sometimes the FBI would be involved in checking your background. So you're getting a clearance, if you will, to work within these nuclear projects. Sometimes I wondered how these other people got through these psychological exams. But I was surprised a lot of those people in those higher offices never really get to walk within that plant itself without being escorted. So they didn't have to submit to the same thing that I did. I had a little plaque here on my chest I wore with my name on there and the company that I worked for, and an authorization code on there to where I could actually be. Well, in the world out here, we don't have that identification to see whether that person we're trying to work with is of a status as what they may say or project. And in the case of this David, when you look out there, all you can do is guess at what his intent is when he come in, and he started giving these gifts. And then he has all these little requests, and he gets very sharp about it. And you quickly find out that his intent at the time is to pretty much control whoever the creator of that channel is. And all of a sudden, they are jumping to his tune. And the people that are already in the chat, sometimes they get a little unnerved over it. And they all wonder the same thing. And it's not that they wonder because of jealousy in any way as far as monetarily, because they were gifted up front with a membership more than likely in that channel. But when things start going a little bit south and the rumble starts, and then the creator tries to put a halt to it, oh boy, all of a sudden it gets a little rough out there. And people that have been around for years get to fighting with each other. Some say, hey, you got to keep your mouth shut. Others say, hey, I've got a right to speak my piece. Well, only the creator of the channel can really set the rules. And sometimes this guy tried to set the rules by setting limitations about maybe somebody he didn't like or something that he wouldn't want it done right now. Snap his fingers and make it so. Right away it sets up a barrier or a fence or a line in the ground. The gifts that were given, all of a sudden the strings appear. They surfaced. And now you know what you're dealing with. What I did, and this goes back a little ways, is I put the type of gifts that was going in there, and I did a search. And I also put the things that were said, okay? Because I wanted to know, what are we dealing with here? And the analysis that came back, 100% of the analysis said that this is the behavior, to a narcissist. It is a way of control. And when I looked at it from that standpoint, then I'm saying, okay, well, that is similar to being an indentured slave. Once you have made this person jump to your tune over gifts, and then if he ever comes along and says, I want it back, which I've seen that actually put in there by that person. And some of you are going to say, oh, no, he never asked for it back. Yes, he did. Last night, he actually asked for the money back. that he was putting out. Now, we know the gifts that at that point from this guy were never from the heart. So what was the real intent? Well, we don't know. You see, only the ones that he was giving out to the channels were channels that were on the opposite end with Jeremy. It is another channel out there that has a war-like system going, and most of you that are on here listening to me right now, you know who that creator is. And my opinion all along is that, you know, he can do what he wants as far as I'm concerned. I just don't like the way he does it. I just don't. And one of the people that have been the recipient of his ire, if you will, in other words, his attention, a negative attention, is one that I wanted to help out. Because as I looked the system over, I felt that it was overwhelmingly attacks, one after another. And you know, this guy coming along with the gifts was like a fresh air, you know, breath of fresh air coming in, except that sometimes you wonder why someone would tell you, beware of those that are bearing gifts. And you have to look at them as much as you would if you were gifting somebody. I mean, most of the time you want to make sure that what you're gifting to somebody is going to do some good. And it isn't always spent the way you think it should be, maybe. But once you give it, as long as you have not said anything about it, then it's a free will type thing for them to do. They can re-gift it if they wish, spread it out, keep it. Whatever they're going to do, it is up to that person who it was gifted to. When somebody comes up back after the fact and says, "You owe me," they don't say it in those exact words, but it may be in such things as run around that wall a dozen times, or take all the stuff off that shelf and gift it. I'll pay for it. In other words, at that point, he's telling you how to run your channel. And you may have spent a long time bringing this channel to the point where you have that kind of people out there that come in there. And all of a sudden, this guy was able to do it in a month's time of throwing a few gifts out there. He had as much control of that channel as you did, and you had built it over a number of years. And I don't know how that makes you feel, or if you ever stop to think about it. But then the real thing that came up last night was controlling the creator in such a manner that some of the people that had been around a long time got butthurt. And the reason being, most people, including myself, don't want to see a lot of fighting in their chats going on, because it's unfair, and it puts you on the spot, because you really have a feeling for everybody that's on your channel, even knowing that they have different ways of viewing things. How do you bring peace when the fighting is going on? It's very hard, especially if the reason they're fighting is over defending the creator of their channel, or the fact, as this person, David, came into the channels and he was throwing rocks. On one channel, he started picking on Lisa. And then he came into Lisa's channel and set her up with giving gifts, then starting to throw rocks at the people that were out there that were long-time subscribers to her channel. And there was magic words sent out there on both channels of, "Shut up." In a manner of speaking, maybe not that exact word, but that was what they were being asked to do. And some of them look, and they think about that, and each of us have a right to believe, and most of us would like a right to speak. Well, in real terms, once the rules are set up, we don't have a right to violate the rules of whatever the channel we're on. We need to respect the creator, whoever it was, and move on. Now, last night when it got out of hand on Guapo's channel, and I hadn't been on there 15 minutes, I had said hi to a few of the people I knew in there, and then all of a sudden, here come this lecture from Guapo. And, I never really intended to be negative in his channel in any way, but I could see that David had set up this attack system. And rather than bite my tongue, I went ahead and got off. I mean, I didn't do anything really negative. I just got off from there. Because I have respect for Guapo, and I know he's got a good heart. And whether I believe he's right or wrong in the way he handled it, that's between him and the people that subscribe to his channel. And I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily agree with Guapo about this guy. I mean, there's no. I was going to say necessarily agree. I don't agree with this guy because of the way his gifting is done. You see, if I give you something, it's a gift, and it's up to you what you want to do with it. And on Lisa's channel last night, it was quite a disruption, and it almost makes you cry because there's people there that they have hearts a lot like Lisa. She has gathered around her a lot of people that are very giving of their self. And most of them don't have a lot in their pocket. And so if they give you $2, it's a lot more than what that millionaire gives you, or I mean this other guy, I don't know if he's a millionaire, gives you 500 pounds. It's because that $2 is harder to come from that person that may not have a whole lot. And I know it's hard to believe. I've always looked at gifts that somebody is presenting to you from the standpoint of when they're given from their heart. A lot of times they're given more than what anybody can believe. It's a percentage of what you have. When you start gifting it out, the Lord is going to look at it and say, well, you have something. And immediately he's going to know why you gave it and how much of you is in that gift. Because if you only have $100 and you gift $2, that's 2% of what you have, you gave away. And it might be that the bills for the day happen to be $98, so you have nothing left over. You gave what you have. My grandmother, bless her heart, both my grandmothers were giving people. But I grew up in the house of my mother's mother. Okay, our whole family did, including, we lived there. She invited us to come with her, and we did that. Very small home, full of love. And she gave everything she had, every penny, to see to it that our family had the things that were necessary, whether it be heat, the utilities, food, all those things. She made up the difference of what maybe couldn't come in the house. Now, my father, in his early years, had a bad habit of quitting his jobs and walking out because he was mad at the boss. And that caused problems where there was not much money coming in from time to time. My grandmother, as old as she was, and she had diabetes, and she was overweight, and she worked on a steamer in a laundry, and this was a commercial laundry, and my aunt lived across the street, or alley, and she was there from 8 to 10 hours a day, earning a living 5 days a week. And I had been there many a time, and the sweat would be rolling off from her face, and you could tell she was tired. Her eyes had that look, and from an early age, I really appreciated her because I knew what she went through to provide for us. Children pick up on stuff at a very early age. What surprised me, here I am, and I'm an adult, and I'm looking in these channels, and I see the fighting that happens, and part of it is due to the money. And the other day, I had said something about, I said, people worry about cash. It causes a lot of problems. And the example I gave was, you have a neighbor, somebody comes over to your neighbor and gives them a basket full of flowers worth about $25. And you all look at him and smile and say, wow, yeah, what a good person delivered you a basket of flowers. It's all good thoughts around it, because it was an item. It wasn't cash. But let's say that somebody come along and offered you, and this would be in front of a group of your peers, and said, here's $25, I want you to have this. And they patted you on the back and walked away, and everybody's looking at you, and they're looking at each other. None of them got $25, but you did. A little bit of animosity comes up. Now, they're glad for this guy. It was a gift. But the next day, the guy comes back, and everybody gets $25. It's a gift. And it was for something. And they go out and they do that. But the person who got 25 got 500. Now they're upset, because it was a bigger gift. It was cash. The flowers that were given with the heart. And it wasn't tangible that they can spend it on something else. And all the neighbors were glad in their heart that you received some flowers, because as far as they were concerned, it represented love. But the cash represents something else totally different. And along with that is a little thing that greed comes in. Money breeds greed in most cases. What are you satisfied with? What will you do for it? Now, most everybody out there has worked very hard at a job or whatever they're going to do to get a little cash for their pocket so they can have a roof over their head and food on their table. And when somebody comes along and slaps $100 down on their table and says, enjoy it, and you do that, next day they come back and they say, you know what, you pissed me off, I want my $100 back. And your heart sinks, because you don't have the $100 because you've already spent it on groceries. You spent it what it was intended for, but the person that gave you the gift could give a shit less. Their intent, what was it? Well, it was to control you, very simply. Now, through my working life, as money came in, and I knew I had to have some money put away, my pay raises and bonuses and anything I gathered over and above my weekly rate went directly into investments of some kind, so that my wife and I could someday have a retirement. And that's what we did. And I never asked for extra things over and above the peers that I was working with. There was times where I shared what I had because I had plenty, and there was a need somewhere along the line. But that was between myself and the person that got it. I didn't put strings on it. And, I feel that's the way it should be done today, but I'm not going to guide you. Only you can guide yourself. If I have to force somebody into doing something from their heart, then it did no good. You have to voluntarily be that way. The one thing I've seen about Lisa, and the reason I follow her channel, is that she is one of those people that gives of herself, which is worth way more than any amount of money you can possibly give. She gives of herself. And her husband does too. And they've rallied people around so that they could help a family out down there in Otter Creek. Now, the fact that she's been under this attack is itself discrepable. I mean, just despicable, is the word I was trying to use. But last night was in a special, vulnerable time. Her best friend, he lives thousands of miles away, coast to coast, is very sick and in the hospital. So she's very vulnerable. And this ugly head of greed and the fighting came up in her channel. Now, the one that come in and started throwing stones, people in the channel went after it, and they actually end up paying the price for it. because in some ways they were held accountable for it. In the fact that, hey, cut the fighting, be quiet. This enough is enough. They were defending the Creator, and they were defending themselves against somebody that started coming in throwing stones. And they didn't know, in their heart, they were wondering if they had come in and did the same thing and people tried to shut them up, would they be given the privilege of going in there and being able to do these things? Now, the one thing I got to say, some of the mods that were in there in Lisa's channel did everything they could to bring this David back down to earth and get him to stop doing what he was doing, because they seen it. They were looking for it. The creators of the channel were doing the things that they would normally do. It's hard to look at the chat and present a program on here at the same time. I know that if it wasn't for the mods, when I'm doing a live, my channel would be torn apart. The first time I tried it, I was being ripped to shreds. So you have to have mods on there. They have your back. And in this case, most of the mods were doing their very best to get this guy to slow down. Not all of them, but most of them. It's a hard road to walk. I mean, when is enough enough? You've heard me say before. When is enough enough? The one thing I can tell you is if you're on somebody's channel, you have to follow what they ask at the time. Now, with me, I was pretty upset with this guy. Now, I didn't call him names, but I did vacate off the channel, and I made sure they didn't do it without leaving in a negative manner, because I don't want to be a person that causes somebody else anguish on their channel. Like I say, Lisa is hurting extremely bad because her best friend is hurting. And so, in that mode, all this come down all at once. It was so unfair to Lisa for everything to happen like that. And because of this guy, it gave fodder to these other channels that have been attacking her on a daily basis. It would go wild. I don't know if it'll be today or tonight or tomorrow, but you can bet she is going to be the topic for quite a while over this. Even though she didn't do it, she was not a part of it. She was only the creator of her channel, and she only was trying to help a family out in Otter Creek. That's all. The people that attack her should be very ashamed. And some of them, I mean, I felt bad in the channel because, well, I just did. And, sleeping on it, I can see, both sides as far as the people who are fighting with each other in there. And I hope that everything can be mended, because the people that were following Lisa need to shake hands and come back in and follow her channel. And I hope those that said that they were unsubscribing come back and subscribe, because sleeping on a problem like that can let you see the light of day and what was really happening. And it was not Lisa's fault, this stuff. So I would ask you, please rethink your position as far as backing Lisa. Please come back and help her over this rough spot. First of all, go ahead and pray for Kendra. She needs our prayers. And pray for Lisa that the heartache that she suffered, over her best friend being so sick, that her load is lightened by our Lord. And I hope you don't construe what I'm talking about as criticism. I'm trying to give you a lesson in life, and it has to do with gifts. And I know I tried to cover this before. And in fact, it hasn't been that long ago I said beware gifts. And now I see what's happened with the fruits of the gifts that came from this big contributor. And it makes me wonder why. Why would a person do that? And only he can answer that. If a person is going to give and they give with their heart, they need to be very careful how they tread. When you give the amounts out and then all of a sudden you walk away, you've made somebody dependent on you. And all of a sudden it's gone, and there's a heartache and a heartbreak there. In this instance here, I can tell you, I do not believe Lisa would ever take a nickel like that from anybody knowingly, and she does not have greed in her. She's not a greedy person. I've never seen a channel quite like hers where she was willing to do everything and contribute so much of herself and her life to a family in need. She did that. She did that out of her being, the person she is. And it's a rare person that's like that. Very rare. And we're all privileged in real terms to be able to see it in action. And we're able to join her in those endeavors if we wish. And when a person like that is having a bad day, we have to help them out if we can. Sometimes we have to step back away from it so as not to get entangled in the downfalls of these fights. Lisa didn't bring this on. That other person did. He came in there, he started throwing rocks, and he was doing it on another channel before he got there. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows why. We don't. We can speculate all we want, but it won't do us a bit of good. It's not going to solve it. So my advice today is, go back, tell Lisa how much you think of her. And I hope your heart, you open it back up when you go back there and do it so that you can say it in earnest. Now there's a channel out there I consider very good. I consider him a friend. It's PBR. And I think he's got a good head on his shoulders, and he expressed himself, which is his right. And him and I think an awful lot alike because of maybe our backgrounds, but it is our station in life of where we went from point A to point B, if you will. And both of us are retired. And I don't think he's greedy in any way. Money is not a big deal. If it was, he would be spending night and day getting his channel big dollars coming in. And he could do it very quickly. He chooses not to. He has things that he likes to do. He loves mechanic work, apparently. This whole thing here is for things that I like to do. I've got projects on all these walls in here and on the cabinets that I love to do. I can go from one to the other and never get bored. And I could work out here from sun up to sunset and not even realize how many hours were involved. So you could say I lead a pretty happy existence. And I hope you don't hold it against me the way I feel about life itself when I give you a little bit of my experience or how I feel about something. It's a piece of me. That's what it is. And I don't get too upset when you tear me apart. It happens. And sometimes I jab back, and that's my privilege. Like I say, it's my channel. I'll do what I want. I enjoy going over to PBR's channel because I know that it's almost like looking in a mirror as far as the mental acuity, if you will, of looking at things and having an opinion. And he has never once said anything negative about my opinion. And I'm sure we don't agree on everything because we come, well, from different states, if you will. And things are different in different areas that you live. Mine is mostly construction, by the way. So now you know how I feel about somebody, my opinion, that has started this ruckus for from day one. And if he really means and wants to be accepted as a person, I think he would stop throwing the rocks and start joining the group as a piece of the group and not trying to control the channels itself. People will love him for the gifts he gives. But if part of the gifts are a string, he took back anything that he would have gained by giving. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. Now, he may have bought some of the channels with his giving, and I feel bad for those channels. They are now indentured slaves, is what they are, to the whims of somebody who bought his way in instead of earning his way in. Most of us, when we're looking at a channel and we start talking with people and we get friendly and we recognize the name and we understand a little bit about them because of the comments they make, and it's a lot of give and take. There is no give and take with this guy, at least to this point. It does remind me a lot of Jeremy, because he has very little give and take, even though the people that follow him think he's the greatest thing in the world. I just don't happen to believe it, because in my experience, the things he asks or does goes against my grain, my personal grain. I'm not trying to change him or his life for him. He can go about it any way he wants. As far as me helping out a family there in Otter Creek in some way, that's for me. I mean, I'm doing it because I feel like doing it, not because of any other reason. They needed some help. I would like to be part of that help in some way, and I appreciate everybody that's going down there and doing the same thing. Physically, it would be very hard for me to do a whole lot. I'm just getting to an age where I can't do those things anymore. I'm so slow. If I was, well, I'm trying to think, a fence, for example, the last fence I built was, trying to think, about 7 years ago, a neighbor over here to the west of me had taken out a bunch of bushes, and we had fences along there, small ones, but when the bushes came out, we had to take all that stuff out. And I helped them remove them. They were dying, the bushes were. And these are bushes that grow up anywhere from 6 to 10 feet. And if you don't trim them, I don't know how far they would go. But anyway, we hit a dry spell, and between the trees and those, it dried everything out. You couldn't keep it wet enough to keep them alive. And then I had somebody come in and drill holes for my posts. The soil around here is expansive clay, and it's very hard. It's hard to get in, especially during a period of drought, and it happened to be a time of drought. And my wife and I built the fence. As old as we are, we do build it. And I don't want to build another one right now because it's so hard to bend over. I have the knowledge and the equipment, and obviously I have plenty of time. It's just that physically it's just tough. When we moved in, I didn't have the time, so I paid somebody else to put in the rest of my fences around here. And, it was quite expensive. But that fence, just that one fence, and it's not a very big one, the material alone was around $1,000, and that's not counting getting the holes drilled. To give you an idea, fences aren't cheap. Like I say, we built it ourselves. We did it with good materials. It looks excellent. We knew what we were doing. So that fence that was done down there in Otter Creek by this group of people wanting to help out, when I look at it, and I haven't been there physically, but from what I can see from the shots that have been taken, it looks like somebody did a very good job. I don't see anything wrong with what was done. I understand the difference between building board by board and when you get in pre-made panels. I know the difference in them. Now mine, I didn't buy the pre-made panels. It's stick by stick, board by board. There was a lot of, and I used screws on it, put it together. There was a lot of work with a power driver, if you will. Now my neighbor, he was able to put the same amount in It was a little cheaper, by the way, than what mine was. And him and two of his sons had it up in about 4 hours, the same amount. My wife and I spent about 3 days doing the one I have back there. I can't remember exactly how long it is. I guess it's the equivalent of 6 or 7 panels, maybe. I don't know. Something like that. Five panels. I guess it'd be more than 5. Maybe it's more like 7 panels total. It was quite a bit. I have to stop by and think, how many's out there. When you're doing it, you don't think much about it. And then I don't remember what the measurements were, even though all I know is that my wife and I did it. Well, I hope I didn't bore you too much today, and please don't get upset with Lisa about last night. As far as Guapo, he's a young guy, and he's probably pissed off because I put something like this up. I know some of his words were last night, if people don't agree with him about David, they wouldn't be welcome on his channel. And I'm sorry he feels that way, because I do think a lot of that young man. And I'm not going to say anything negative. He's got a good heart, very good heart, and he helps everybody that needs it, that wants it. He'll do whatever it takes to do that. Maybe someday he'll accept some of us back that don't particularly care for this guy. When I see somebody starting a fight, which this guy did, I'm not going to keep my mouth shut. I just won't. But if somebody sees the light of day and says, well, Ray, come on back, well, then I would do that. Okay. So for all of you out there, have a nice day. And this wasn't put up there for any malice whatsoever. Just to open your eyes up so that you can see, and hopefully it won't cause any more infighting than what it is. I would ask some of them that got butt hurt last night in Lisa's channel, please give her another chance. I want you to understand something. When you have the heartache come down on you, where you have such a close friend that's in dire need of help, it's hard to make good decisions, and not that she made any bad ones, because I don't think she did. But it's hard for somebody like that, when they're explaining things, to be looking at the entire chat to see what's going on and trying to control it. It would be an impossibility, and the mods did try very hard to control everything in there. The fighting that happened among the subscribers, I feel bad for it. I feel sorry that anything like that had to happen. I think it was predestined. The guy came in there, started throwing rocks, and as soon as somebody in there tried to stop the fight, it was kind of brutal. And that's about all I got to say about it. And hopefully Guapo will change his mind about people that he don't want anything to do with, don't like David. The only thing I can tell you is I don't like the way that David did things, and the fact that he's moving against Lisa is enough for me to say, goodbye, David. If you decide to change your ways and you want to be the good person you should be, and you really want to give gifts, just come back and explain it to the people that you've crapped on, and understand the type of fighting you caused within a group. If you're proud of yourself, then fine. I guess you accomplished whatever it was that you wanted to in the first place. I had hoped that you would be a bigger man than that, but I guess maybe, well, yeah, we can all judge what you may have done or what you are, unless you want to do something I don't know. I mean, whatever you are, you are. With that, goodbye, and hopefully all of you have a good day, a good week, and come back when you want to get some more entertainment. I'll be here.